Hello and welcome to TradeGecko's Commerce and Inventory Management webinar. We're really excited to have everyone join us, and for the next 55 minutes, we'll walk you through the results of our global survey. Before we begin though, I just wanted to walk through a couple of housekeeping items. So first and foremost, we'll be recording this webinar and we'll make it available for everyone tomorrow. So you can expect that in your inboxes. We'll also have a Q&A session at the end of the webinar, so please make sure you guys submit your questions on the chat window at the right. All right, let's get started here. So I'm Cameron Burnest. I'm Vice President at TradeGecko, and I'm responsible for our strategic partnerships and global customer experience. Also joining me for today's webinar is Dr. G, aka Gary Edwards, who's the CEO of Gulfdale Consulting. Gary, thanks so much for joining.
Cameron, it's my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
So to give everyone a little bit of background, TradeGecko partnered with Gulfdale midsummer to bring you the results of this exciting global survey on inventory and order management. But before I give Gary the mic to himself, I wanted to give a little bit more context from the TradeGecko side of things. So as a company that really supports merchants around the globe, and as part of what we're trying to attempt to do is build a long-term partnership with these merchants, we wanted to make sure that we have a really sound understanding of the challenges they're facing on a daily basis. We have all of the TradeGecko the data from TradeGecko, but really wanted to make sure that we're not just looking at our data in isolation. So that's when we engaged Gary to really work with his team. And we wanted to understand and have insights into why were merchants doing certain things? Why are they not doing certain things? What are some of the different growth levers they have for their business? And many other interesting aspects of this merchant business. And the results were fascinating. I can't wait to spend some time with Gary today to truly go through them. So without further ado, I'll pass it over to Gary to walk us through some of the results.
Cameron, thank you so much. And so again, we're here to talk about a survey we did. This was quite a large undertaking. The ink has barely dried off the presses, if you will, Cameron. We spoke to over 1,100 small and medium-sized businesses from around the world. In particular, we went into the US and Australia, two opposite sides of the planet, then 29 other countries. And we asked them all kinds of questions, but we in particular wanted to get to product-oriented companies. That I know are dear to your heart and to many in the audience. So of those 1,100, 570, as you can see here, were product-centered companies, and that is really the focus of our webinar today. So we tackled about 7 different areas of their business, kind of interrogated them in a really friendly fashion, and asked them lots of questions, actually over 30 in total. And we listened closely. Out of those, we emerged some stories. And what I look for as a researcher who's done this for a couple of decades, Cameron, is what are the patterns? What are the stories that emerge out of the data? And I'm excited to share those with you today. So we're going to look at the state of small business and taking a look around the world. And I just have to say, before we get into the data, as different as the world may be, the story of small business, I think, is one where people have more similarities, more in common than they have differences. And the first and most important thing I'd have to say, we kind of know this, but have to be reminded of it. Or if we don't know, here's the headline: you're not alone. Small businesses dominate the planet in terms of the business sector. They don't always, if you read the Harvard Business Review, or you read MIT Sloan, or you pick up The Economist or Forbes, or what have you, you read a lot of articles, but usually they attend to big business and kind of big business issues. But the reality is, in the US, for example, there's like 18,500 large firms, but balance against that the 28 million small businesses. And Cameron, you do the math here, which I'm pretty good at, and you find a 1,500 to 1 ratio or better of small to big businesses. So most people are employed in the small business sector. Similarly, you go all the way around the world, spin your globe around, and what do you find? Well, in Australia, you find that some 97% of businesses are small, and by that we mean employing less than 20 people. Actually, in Australia, it's just 0.2%. That's 2 out of 1,000 businesses are what we characterize as large businesses. So today, number one finding is you're not alone. It can feel like you're alone, though, when you're out there, you're an entrepreneur, you're running your business, And what we have to share with you today is that, well, you're not. And in fact, it's actually quite diverse. You know, when you look at the kind of businesses, small businesses that are out there. We ask people, just as a start, kind of, how old are you? How old is your business? We cross-tabulate those, and then we also look at just what kind of business that you're in. Before we get to what happens when we dive in, here is something that kind of startled us. And so I have to pull us back a second. What startled us is we gave some really good categories and said, these are where most small businesses reside. So just click on one. So that would have been the easy way to get through the survey. And as you might suspect, people usually want to get through these surveys pretty quickly. But what we found, Cameron, is that people paused. They didn't want to just click on, here's the sector, you know, I work in, my business is in the cosmetics and beauty or accessories and jewelry. They wanted to tell us what products they made and the people they sold to. So our second big insight, I think, for today is, and you can test this yourself, the audience can. You know, you ask somebody from a big company, so who do you work for? And they'll tell you a brand name, and they'll typically tell you the sector they're in. Oh, I work for so-and-so, we're in the telecom space, or blah, and I'm in, you know, government or energy or what have you. But you just talk to a small business person, and they'll tell you about the product they make and the kind of people they serve. So I think it's just important to be grounded in that. Small business is really a very personal, intimate affair. It's something that captures our passion when we run a business like this. And with that, we can see that evidence, first and foremost, because people resist being categorized.
Absolutely. We see this a lot with the merchants that we support here at Trade Gecko. It's, you know, they get inspired by the original products they're bringing to market. This is why they're willing to potentially leave their day job. You know, it's a massive risk, and, you know, they get passionate about it, and we love to just, you know, understand their products and what makes them tick and just help them run their business more efficiently. So completely agree. We see it all the time, and it's just, you know, unbelievable to see the creativity some of these people bring in terms of the products they're launching and bringing to market.
Yeah, small businesses, I'm sure if you spark up a conversation saying, tell me a little bit about what you do, it turns into a longer conversation right away. So as I said, we started asking people, so how long have you been at this? And, you know, how old are you? What does that look like? What we found is that a lot of people start really young, and then many people have been at it for a long time. And so as you can see here, many even quite past retirement age. And so I think that diversity is very important. And then if we look in terms of the number of people that small businesses employ, then it's not surprising. We didn't talk, you see the zero here, we didn't talk to any one-person millionaire shops, but we did talk to lots of folks who have just themselves as sole proprietors. Actually, it's not shown here, but about half of these folks in this 32% column are running businesses under 100,000 in revenue a year. And as you can see here, when you look across the spectrum, what we've got is, and I think you made the point already, but I just want to reinforce it. You've got people not necessarily just chasing the money in the dream, but chasing the dream of a great lifestyle. Be your own boss, set your own hours, have your own particular passion, and even though those hours can get long, Cameron, what we see time and time again as we survey people, and I'm sure you see it in your business, is that when you're doing it for yourself, it has a totally different feel than when you're doing it because your boss or somebody else is telling you to. So let's dive into some more of the results then. We asked people about the channels that they sell through. So how do you go about your business? And, you know, number one was, and this is in particular for when businesses are just starting and they're under $1 million, or they may have been around for some time, but the smaller end of the small businesses, if you will, Cameron. You know, usually they're selling directly and they're relying on word of mouth referrals. So it's either who you know or somebody you know that they know, but it's a fairly intimate network, and this is where it starts. And then their second channel is usually major online marketplaces. So here's the good news, and our audience knows it, but there's lots of great technology out there. Go on Amazon, eBay, Alibaba, etc., and get your product out in front of a much larger audience. And so when we ask people what specific ways do you sell your products, these are the number one and number two that came through for businesses under $1 million. But then it starts to get just a little bit more complex. We start looking at the revenue by revenue levels. You know, are you under $1 million, or in that 1 to 5, or have you actually busted through and now you're over a $5 million business? And some really interesting results, some differences start to emerge. And I think the first thing I want to draw your attention to is the fact that, scaling a business, going from 1 to the 1 to 5 to over 5, again, you kind of know this when you step back and think about it, but it's an important finding and it's an important reminder. You can't just do more of what you're already doing. You can't just be exceptional at making the product you're making and really good at selling it, Cameron. You have to start doing things differently. And the doing things differently is really what scaling is all about. So let's look at we've highlighted some of these differences, and I want to draw your attention to them. We'll go through them, a few of them, one at a time. So when I said earlier that, where a business starts, kind of who you know, that first product you sold, because not just because your friend or family member wanted it, but somebody else, those are really important business moments. And you start to, although your business might start through those immediate referrals, it's not that those referrals become unimportant. They become less important than other things that take over the business with success if you want to sell successfully. And so word of mouth referrals, you can see here, drops when we do a rank order. What we had done is ask people, just click off which of these methods that you use, and then we just count up the percentages for each. And you can see the rank, and what we're showing here, Cameron, is just the rank order changes as businesses get larger. Online marketplaces. We'd also said that was, number 2 in terms of where you start. You start relying less on this. It gets subordinated under selling directly to end customers online. Kind of creating your own marketplace, or your own website, selling through your own marketplace, or one like Shopify or WooCommerce, etc. So you start to take back control of that from the Amazons, the eBays of the world, and say, I need to sell this direct myself. And we'll see that here in terms of the other thing that happens, which is you start, this is the online sales. This is the point I was just making. You start to sell it with more control over your actual business. Yep.
Yeah, no, we see a lot of this, and the data doesn't surprise me as you start to kind of transition your business. There's a couple of key things. You look at like the complexity, and the word scale is something that continuously jumps at me when I look at some of the results of this survey. Word of mouth, obviously it's great, like you said, to get going, but how scalable is that? When you start looking at some of these other channels like online sales, you're creating your own unique e-commerce experience, and that's something that you control, and brand is something that is important as you think about scaling. Like you said, on the marketplace side of things, these are other ways to, if you don't necessarily have that brand, to help really start to think about scaling that, and just driving more awareness to what you're delivering out there.
Perfect. And then the other thing we know about scaling, Cameron, is that there's only 24 hours in a day. So that's not really an insight, but what might be an insight is you've got to find ways that you can teach others and find others who can tell your story as well as you can tell. So scaling the business is all about finding, as well, in many businesses, as we're seeing here, especially those over $5 million, you've got to find professional salespeople who can tell the story with hopefully equal passion and dedication to the craft of evangelizing, if you will, on the products that you want to sell. And we see that as critically important.
No, that makes a ton of sense, Gary, because what we see is once you start to get to that 5 million plus, there's so much demand for your products that you need to be able to kind of, like you said, go out in a very professional way and take those sales, because there will be people that'll be knocking on your door saying, hey, we want to buy this, or we want to potentially wholesale this for you. There's different things that happen as you continue to grow, and as a business owner, you just need to be able to recognize these and embrace them, and build out the structure within your company to be able to take advantage of that.
Well, that's perfect. And so I think the story then extends all the way through to distributors. Usually not very important when businesses are starting, but of increasing importance. And we don't highlight it here, but I'd say a fairly similar story if you track, wholesalers from number 6 for businesses that are starting, all the way up to a rank of number 4 for the businesses over $5 million. So again, you're taking on more complexity. You're not just doing more of the same, to our earlier point, as you scale a business upwards. Now, that said, we asked people, how do you see the mix of your sales by channel changing in 2018? as we saw earlier, a lot of people, let's look at the bar on the left, more direct and in person. So this is, again, reinforcement for what we just said, Cameron. We've got people who are selling more directly through salespeople, but also directly to end customers online. Again, they're taking back or owning their own website, and they're making sure they can build their own brand around that particular product. So we see a lot of that, and we see very few, a very small percentage of people reversing what they're doing. It's just that they're increasing. So they're doing more of what they're currently doing, and they're offering it through more channels, I think, is the bottom line. Make sense?
Absolutely.
Well, then let's talk about the story of growth itself. The fact is, most companies that we spoke to were doing relatively well. You can see there's a column here from 40% down to 53. So, lots of companies are just sort of in stasis, or they're, they hope they're not anticipating, or they haven't seen any much change over this last year. But lots of them, very few are slipping backwards, but lots are making headway, and they're doing it in some obvious ways. So right at the top here, they're obviously bringing in some more cash. They're getting more revenue. They're doing that through selling more of the current products that they offer, but they're also looking for more customers. And you can see the percentages here as they grow. So the 7, 8, and 6, some companies are experiencing some real hyper growth across all of these various and obvious ways that we grow our business. Perhaps less obvious, though, is some also look to new territories, and they have to look to new partners. Usually you're only looking for 1 or 2 more. You're not going from 1 country to 50, but you might go from 1 to 2 or 3. Similarly, you might look for that next partner. And so we're seeing a lot of growth in terms of new territories and new partners. Again, it speaks to, if you want to be successful, you don't want to be crushed by the current success. You don't have more hours in the day. You have to work smarter. You have to work differently. And we see that through growth of new territories and new partners. So scaling isn't easy. We ask people, so where do you go to figure out how to do your business better? And the top 3 were, well, I just listen to my customers, so that's always a great idea. I'm no surprise in that. User feedback. Use word of mouth, which is what are people saying about me, and making sure you're very attentive to your brand, and then doing all kinds of online research. The internet is a wonderful thing, not just for selling, but just for making us smarter about what's out there. And then, what holds you back? It's a tough environment out there, Cameron. I'm not surprising anyone in the audience when I say that. So all the good news around, hey, you can sell through, for example, Amazon or eBay, is also the hard news, which is, wow, you've got some tough competitors, and they can show up from anywhere in the world onto your doorstep as you try and sell your wares. So tough competitors, and again, just how many hours do you have to get the job done? Let's come back to that one a little bit, but I think the insufficient time is another one.
No, I absolutely. I can't wait to hear some of the insights on that. But yeah, time, that resource, looking at even the hiring, operational, like that all comes back to time. Do you have the time in the day to prioritize these things? And how are you actually spending that time as a small business owner? It's critical in terms of how you think about it. And I know a lot of the customers we work with, they don't put enough value on that time. And some of the stuff we do to help them become more efficient really allows them to focus on some of the higher priority areas within the business that really are going to allow them to take on that tough competition, make sure they're supported, and really tackling the right things to continue to sustain that growth over time.
That makes a lot of sense. Of course, we talk about online research and getting user feedback, etc. And this is how you scale. Of course, you can't do that without getting some sort of peek under the hood of social. And everyone's heard of this, so we just and I'm sure it's pretty conversant in it. So let's just spend a little bit of time on this. We rely on recommendations from people we know for the product decisions we make. So obviously, attending to our brand and guarding that reputation is important. As a small business person, you're trying to obviously build your advocates, manage any naysayers, and then scaling your business beyond your immediate reach. And you do that by, that golden moment when someone provides a great review online or speaks highly of your product, and you may have never met them and you don't know them personally, and that's got to be a great moment in a small business person's life where you realize, hey, that thing that I do and produce, it's now out there and people are talking about it as its own thing. So it's certainly the truth that social helps drive business. When we looked at which kinds of sites do you go to help you drive your business, Facebook still number 1. And how long that will be, I don't know. We're not soothsaying here. We don't know how long that will stay into the future, but it's certainly a powerful vehicle now. As businesses get larger, we look to the green bar here, those over $5 million, you can see some, I think, again, you take on some more complexity. You take on not more channels here, if you will, in terms of selling, but more channels to market. And so you're using Twitter more, using YouTube. Google Plus is going away, but many have used it up to now. And then certainly LinkedIn standing out as a way to tell your own story and the story of your brand and your product inside it. I'm on LinkedIn, and I'm surprised by the number of just pure product plays that come through in advertising on it.
Absolutely.
With a high degree of relevance. So obviously their algorithms are working.
That's exactly it. And I think the key thing here for me is, it's, as you build the business, you're also building the brand, right? You think about all of those iconic brands out there, thinking about the likes of like Nike or something like, you're not just buying a piece of rubber and, some fabric, you're buying the brand itself, that Nike swish. So I think a lot of times when you're head down working on it, a lot of the merchants we talk to, it's, they lose sight of that. And I think as you really leverage social, it becomes critical across all of these key channels just to do a lot of experimentation, try it out, see what happens, see what works. The way you can execute within some of these channels has become really seamless and really easy. So a big thing we work with our merchants on, it's just experimentation and testing it out. You never know what's going to resonate for the merchants that you or the customers you're looking to sell to unless you try it.
You're right. And as people know, it's not necessarily the person who makes the better mousetrap or the better product that always wins. Really, the product has to resonate. It has to say something about the person who either has it or possesses it, tells others about it, uses it. What does it say about you that use that product? So that's all about brand reputation, and social is, of course, the perfect vehicle for telling that story. Well, here's a story that's probably near to your and dear to your heart, Cameron. That's the story of inventory management. We did dive in pretty closely to the tools that companies use. And what we found is a lot of people, about half of the folks we spoke to, do have some frustrations in this area. They're worried in particular about the time that they have to spend. And so we wanted to drill into that a little bit more. So why would so many people be frustrated with their current inventory management? Well, here's a clue. There's a lot of people, this astounded me. Look at the gray bar here, sort of in the middle, Cameron. We've got a lot of people, in particular those running businesses under $1 million, who are still using good old-fashioned pen and paper to run their inventory management. Those who don't, option number 2 seems to be, as you grow in sophistication, well, I can do this myself. I think this is probably the most common story, or I'm sure you run into, Cameron, is people are using Excel or Google Sheets to run it, and there's still quite a few who don't do anything. And then, of course, there are a number of software solutions out there. But then as businesses grow, what do we see happen? So this really kind of, here's what didn't surprise me. You want to run a business over $5 million. There's not many who can do that and still just use a pen and paper. Yeah, I don't know what they're selling, but congratulations to them if they can manage, write that fast and keep that many sheets of paper on a clipboard in order. But the real story here that surprised me was how many still actually turn to Excel or Google and kind of do it themselves.
It's one of those things, like you look at some of the stories we get from the merchants that we support, and a lot of it is they feel the pain, they don't know where to go to get the support. And we talked a lot about the growth drivers. As soon as you're adding all of these different sales channels, the complexity of running your business just magnifies exponentially. So this is where things like, the different tools you use, how you use them, minimizing a lot of the errors and potential issues, because anytime you have errors and issues in these things, it's costing you real dollars, whether you're stocking out, potentially giving a bad customer experience, or you're missing sales because your inventories aren't correct on the various channels that you're selling. It has real business impact, and it impacts that bottom line in a significant way.
Well, we can see where it's hitting the bottom line when we look at how many hours people spend. So we actually had them record for us, how many, and inform us, how many hours are you spending on all of the following: the sourcing products, managing the inventory, your purchase orders, your sales orders. Add it up. Tell us. We had them give us hours for each of these categories, and then some very simple math came out to, this is on average. So that means half of them are spending even more than this, right? Just, we all know what an average is, but my gosh, that's like 90 hours. So, if I don't know of too many small business people who do this, but if you only worked a 40-hour week, then over the course of a month, you got 160 hours. Over half of that is spent just managing, like half a person's time rather, is spent just managing this stuff.
That is absolutely mind-blowing, but not surprising at the same time, because I keep talking about the merchants we work with, and that's the benefit of my role and what I do with all the TradeGecko customers. But you get to see a lot of this stuff, and the reality is a lot of these things are interconnected. You look at managing inventory to managing purchase orders and sales orders. It's all interconnected, and there are tools and solutions that allow you to take yourself out of the day-to-day operation and automate a lot of that. Like I say, spending more time on the value-added stuff for your business as you think about that brand and continued growth, and just even positioning versus competition. It's everything is interconnected in terms of where you're spending your time, where you're putting your effort as a business owner, and it's critical that you're understanding and taking that little bit of time to self-reflect and say, am I spending my time on value-add things, or am I spending it on reconciliations and updating inventory or updating spreadsheets? It's I know it's challenging, and like we alluded to at the outset, it can feel like you're in isolation, and that's the benefit of studies like this, and really understanding that you're not alone, and there's solutions out there to help you.
Yeah, everyone knows and hears the stories of failure when and for every small business person, you live with this sort of terror, like, what if people don't want to buy what I have to sell? But I have to say, some people get crushed with success too. They don't know how to keep up with it. They don't know how to manage the backbone of their company to make sure that, and they don't know how to do things differently. They keep trying to kind of do it themselves, reinvent things that have already been invented in terms of process, versus focusing on what their real passion is, which is, but you make great product, or maybe you love to sell or get in front of your customers. That's really where you should be spending your time, not half a person time a month or more, just managing these orders. So countering this, or despite this, when we ask people, do you consider yourself digitally savvy, just in general, we've got most who are giving themselves either, pretty positive marks here. Either you're saying moderately or very digitally savvy. And so kind of like a house or a car, I think one of the dangers of running a small business is you become this fixer-upper, right? And you can spend all time tinkering and not, if it's your car, you're tinkering with your car, you're not driving it around, you're not using it. So I think for a business, it's important to focus on that too. You might be smart about it. You might have figured out a lot of how to do it yourself, but really you've got a place to go. And your business, you've got to make sure you're not spending all your time doing your fixer-upper stuff, and you're actually kind of going where you need to go with your product and with your customers. And because there are consequences. And, if we look at just those who are experiencing inventory management frustrations, here's how it breaks out. Plain and simple, the frustration is it just takes too much time. Second to that, accuracy problems. Third is, you're just introducing risk into your business. So, and the risk is, it's not just that you can't keep up, but whatever the stats are on this camera and around, every time you miss an order, every time you get it wrong, the cost is more than just that in that one sale. They all have ripple effects. And so I think this notion of risk is very important. And as you can see here, the larger a company gets, the more the understanding of what risk really means. You get your forecast wrong, and you're either holding on to inventory that you shouldn't be, and you're causing yourself some cost there, or you've got demand that you're not able to meet. Both of those are where risk really comes into reality for your business. And so we look at the story of technology that sits in behind that. We asked, again, kind of drilling into their expertise, just general e-commerce expertise. How do you see yourself? The interesting thing here is in-house, pretty static no matter what size you are. There's a little bit over half the cohort who are talking about, we just do this in-house. Those who think it's not required, obviously that diminishes. You do need e-commerce expertise if you're running a $5 million plus business. So that percentage diminishes. But this gray bar in the middle, the outsourcing, it's the one we're seeing increase. A lot of companies are turning outside help. Now, again, with what you offer, it's kind of a mixture of both, right? That is a little bit of, or mostly in-house. You can bring this expertise in-house.
That's correct, Gary. I mean, we definitely have the in-house capability, and like you demonstrated on a couple slides previously, people do feel like they have a little bit of tech savviness there. Some of them with a high level, some without. But the reality is, most solutions out there try to take a lot of the pain out of these things and make it as user-friendly as possible. So as long as there's a willingness to want to attempt and try that, that's really where this in-house solution comes in. And we've got a team on our side where we basically help you with the onboarding yourself. But as companies continue to grow, like you alluded to, outsourcing becomes an imperative. And a lot of times this is more the education of the business owner themselves, where they realize, hey, my time isn't best spent. And I know we've spoken a lot about this. It's not best spent doing this type of activity because it's not that value creation, and it doesn't have that magnification across the entire company, whether that be let's build new products, let's think about how do we compete against this competition, how are we entering new markets, those types of things, because we see that as really the true creation of value and sustaining that growth long term. And it's a learning process, right?
It's got to be. I mean, I'm just here to tell you what the research says, but so I'm not on your sales team here, Cameron. But I have to say, if I were in front of one of your customers, I'd be saying, look, you didn't invent, hopefully, you did try to create your own accounting software. Why in God's name are you trying to create your own inventory management software? Well, there are other companies who know how to do this. So get back to doing what it is you do well, and that plays out in terms of digital technology overall. Again, we see that here, almost half, or 4 to 10, are buying tech solutions, running them themselves, and more are outsourcing as they get larger. So really reinforcing what we've just said. So let's look at the trends that impact their business. Again, we put a whole number of them in front of the folks we surveyed, and we asked them, do you think these are having a positive impact on your business? Are they having a negative impact, or maybe no impact at all? So you can see that no impact line. Here's what's interesting. So before you look at the beautiful graphs here, look, it goes from 26 to 70. So this I found fascinating. All the way over on the far right, I can't pick up a newspaper or an article, especially in business, and not hear about blockchain. And it does have some relevance, I would think. I would have thought it had more relevance to your business. Blockchain in particular for quality assurance, it's being used in supply chain efficiency. But I guess for most small businesses, they're still thinking of it as sort of, if they're thinking of it at all. I know we all read the same things, but it's more of a big business play. Same with cryptocurrency. I guess the old notion that, hey, I love cash or check. Or now payment option is really what holds true. Most are not looking at cryptocurrency, despite everything we're reading in the press about it, as really having much of an impact on their business in this next year. But look all the way over to your left, Cameron. Here's what people are saying who run small businesses is going to have a profound effect. One is just social platforms in general. I think we've touched on that quite a bit, but let's talk a little bit more about mobile technology and apps. This is certainly the world that you fit into, and then the connectivity to that on payment innovation. So the easier you can make it, software is all about ease and convenience. It's not just about its sexiness. It's just like, look, this way of doing things is easier and more hassle-free than the old way I used to do it. So now I use it, and certainly we're seeing payment innovation as really important here. So last point on this. Very few people are focused on newer changing regulations as it's not sort of government regulation that's doing this. It's just staying in touch with and on top of kind of changing trends overall in the business environment that's helping.
Yeah, from my side, I think you tend to want to look at the new bright shiny objects, and things like you look at the cryptocurrency, blockchain. These are bright, shiny objects. When you're a small business owner, we need to think about foundational and really building that solid base upon which you can then drive your business. Once you get, the social platforms, how you're engaging with your customers, the entire tech stack from the way you sell to the way you operate. Once those things are solidified, that's when we can start to play around with the bright, shiny objects and the stuff that's on the front page of the Globe and Mail, whatever it is, whatever paper you're reading, or whatever website you're using. Exactly.
Well, to your point, as businesses climb up over $5 billion, so we're just breaking out those who saw it as really having a positive impact. You can see here right in the middle, Cameron, warehouse automation becomes really, really more important. So I think what businesses are doing as they grow is they're then saying, okay, I need convenience through the supply chain, and automation in this world is going to open up some exciting avenues for them. So lastly, let's look at the story of opportunity. Here again, I think there's some really interesting findings. Again, there it is, cryptocurrency, blockchain. Nope, that's not what people are jazzed about. They love new technology, social trends that are changing, and customer preferences. And so I think these three on the left really speak to what makes small businesses awesome, which is you're absolutely intimate with the customer that you're selling to, especially as you start, and you've got to be attuned to a particular marketplace for which you're excited and passionate about providing the products that you provide. And the fact that customer preferences change, you see some feel that's a threat, but most see that as the opportunity. So the word often used is just nimble. You're nimble. The big companies that you may be competing with, this is where you beat them. Things change, especially customer preferences, and you can be there first. That's where a lot of small business is winning.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
So we saw it at the beginning. Now we're seeing it at the end. Nobody likes all the new competition out there. And again, not surprising, very few small businesses excited about regulation or taxes. I guess that wasn't really something we were expecting to see much positive on, but there has been lots of political talk of how to make it easier for small businesses. Most small business people have not been swayed yet. Still feel it's a heavy slogging environment, and I understand why, which is all the way back to the hours that you spend. The administrative side of a business is rarely the part that gets people excited. You want to be passionately building your product, you want to be passionately selling it, and you love to be in front of your customers. Some combination of those, and making sure they're enjoying them, you're servicing them well. Usually some combination of those three. And again, that takes us back to, you're going to use new tech to do that. You're going to be really in touch with social trends, and that's why you're able to sell what you sell. And you're going to be nimble and able to stay on top of those changing customer preferences. So the biggest opportunities, again, we see automation really pops for businesses that are up over $1 million. And again, I know you sit squarely in the middle of that, but the automation of capabilities is so important for the success of small businesses. So I want to finish off my section here. We want to leave enough time for questions that the audience may have. I'm happy to take questions on the research itself, but I think also just in terms of your experience, Cameron, because you've been doing this for a number of years. It's absolutely critical. So we want to invite those questions. As we do, I just want to offer you 5 kind of summary things that I think are so important from what we've seen emerging out of these patterns, these stories, if you will, inside the research that we conducted, again, global in scale. First, you want to really focus on the things that make you great, and your strengths. So, dragging somebody into you got to do more of accounting or administration, or all the inventory management, sourcing stuff that goes on, which is really critical to running a business. Typically, those aren't where small businesses people thrive. So if your strength is that you love to make a great product and you love to sell it, then I think the mission has to be focus on those strengths, find ways to do more of that, and then find new ways, point number 2, to change up that you're not just doing this yourself, but you're using some new marketing and sales strategies, channels, if you will, to enable that. I think it's a really, point number 3 here, I don't want it to be lost. People think of money as an investment strategy for obvious reasons. I think they should look at their time equally as an investment strategy. And it's a really simple exercise. If you can find the time, maybe it's 15 minutes. It seems like a lot of the audience is pretty good at Excel or Google Sheets. So, take an hour, time motion your business. Just write down it. You might be delighted, you might be horrified, but just write down how much time in any given week do I spend, and have some broad categories. Include in that the admin side of your business, include in that the accounting, include in that the inventory management, as well as building new product. How much time do I spend selling, getting in front of customers? Have 5 or 6 broad categories, and kind of time track. And you might be horrified at how you're spending your time and whether or not it's really a wise investment strategy. You might decide to change things up. The good news is, point number 4 is, you're nimble. You are a small business, and you can find ways to automate many of the things that you find you shouldn't be spending time on. We don't want you to, as important as they are, when we say it's important, we don't want you to spend more time on them. We want you to raise their importance so that you start looking for solutions for them that can reduce the time it takes to do those things well. And I guess that leads us all the way into 5th point here, which is, you've got to build a strong backbone to your business. Like, success, again, can crush a business as much as people not wanting your product is obviously the death knell, but people wanting it, you not being able to forecast properly, you not being able to keep up with those orders, you having too many of the wrong products that you're storing, all these things can break a business as well. So you've got to build that backbone to your business. Building a world-class operational infrastructure, I think that's absolutely critical to growing your business. So let me leave it off there. Those are highlights. We're going to have a white paper that comes out shortly that I know you're going to share with your audience at some point. But
absolutely, and I think on behalf of TradeGecko and the entire audience that's listening to us, just want to thank you for your time. Some fantastic expertise brought here, and just really excited about the results and what that can mean for everyone that's listening to this, and really exciting stuff. So without further ado, let's keep the webinar going and transition to some of the Q&A. Let's see some of the questions we've got up here.
So I'm going to ask the questions and put you on the spot, Cam. Here's the first one. We saw a bunch of different channels, but which would, from the research, but here's the question. What's the best way to grow sales? Is it direct e-commerce? Should you use wholesale, distributor, marketplace? Do you have an opinion in terms of what's best for growing your business?
Yeah, let me caveat this with there's no best way to continue to grow. There's the best way for you and your business. So the reality is, we've seen customers that have started selling on a marketplace. Maybe they've started their own e-commerce store, or maybe they've started from a brick and mortar. The evolution and kind of growth of some of these companies really take kind of on a path of their own. For example, a watch company, compared to a furniture, compared to a cosmetic company, they all have different paths to success. But the big critical thing that I kind of see when we look at our clients is that develop that understanding of your customer. Who is your customer? How do they make decisions? How do they purchase? Where do they make these purchases? The more you understand the customer, the better you can understand their behaviors and anticipate where you need to be as an organization. Yeah, and I alluded to this, when we were talking earlier. It's experimentation. We went through all of the different social channels. We went through, there's a plethora of marketplaces. There's different ways to create your own e-commerce store. The reality is, the software that you can use to create this is easier today than it's ever been. So I really encourage people to, to take the opportunity to experiment and continue to test and iterate. Nothing is, it all takes time, and the old saying, like, hard things are hard. Running a business is probably one of the hardest things. And I know it's a little bit overwhelming, but I can't stress enough, focus on, that experimentation, and by focusing on your customer, that's truly where you're going to start to see a lot of success.
Well, that's great, Cameron. Here's I won't read last names just for people's privacy, but it's more of a comment, but it comes from Michael. Michael makes a great comment here. He says, I'm just going to read it. Use the so what test. When you want to evaluate your workload and you observe your behavior, ask so what? How's it helping? How's it improving your business? Can you actually delegate some of the things that you're currently doing? Things you can avoid, things that you can automate. Just a statement, but I wanted to take it. It comes from our audience, and I think it builds nicely in the point that you're making.
love the comment, and I think it's applicable to so many different situations. And it's yeah, sometimes it's you just get your head down and you're working away and running your business. You got to constantly challenge yourself and elevate to that 25, 30,000 foot view, and make sure you're prioritizing the right activities.
Great. Well, here's a sort of a technical question, but I'm gonna take them all here. We've got the time. For somebody who's shy, it says waiting for your name. What books do you recommend on making an e-commerce business successful? If by books, if they mean accounting, I know we did get into all the research. This will come out later, but I know a lot of folks are using QuickBooks. We saw in Australia, in particular, using Xero. Maybe just speak very briefly to books that you see people using, or if you see them doing it kind of themselves, and how what you offer integrates.
Yeah, I mean, different books in terms of, yeah, I think education is one of those things. Like when you're a business owner, you need to continuously push yourself to further educate. And I'm actually going to use this opportunity. It's like they've taken the words out of my mouth here, but we're actually I encourage everyone at the end to sign up for our Masters of Commerce, which is really kind of an industry-leading e-commerce platform to give those best tricks and tips on the e-commerce space. I encourage you to look at a lot of the different blogs out there, from TradeGecko to some of the great partners that we work with, like the Shopifys of the world. There's great content that is extremely relevant, and there's a lot of different kind of books out there just on management overall, like things like efficiency, high output management is one that I really like. Looking at a great article is done by Kevin Kelly, a 1,000 True Fans. So I think it's kk.org, but if not, we'll include that with some of the notes. But there's a lot of great material, and that one from Kevin Kelly is like, focus on developing those 1,000 true fans of your product, and that will help you kind of scale. And don't try to boil the ocean. It's really thinking about who are those true 1,000 fans and how do I grow my business around that. And that's where a lot of them, merchants that we work with start to see success as they start to translate that to new audiences and new groups. So yeah,
that's
tons
awesome.
of material out there. Like I said, Masters of Commerce is something that we're bringing out for all of those e-commerce enthusiasts, whether you're a merchant, whether you're interested in the e-commerce space, or even thinking about dabbling. Definitely encourage everyone to sign up for that.
That's great. The question was a little ambiguous. It said which books. I thought they meant accounting. You think they mean books in general?
I think they mean books.
I think you might be right.
Education is, obviously accounting is important, as we all know.
You're probably right. You're probably right, Cameron. That's helpful advice. Here, let me get to the next question. Operationally, what would you say is separating the leaders from the rest of the pack?
Yeah, I know we've talked a lot about kind of strong product. Strong product usually comes with a strong understanding of your customer base. So we see that as a great entry point. However, from what I've seen, that's not sufficient to drive the long-term success. As these merchants kind of evolve and grow and progress in their journey, I see a lot of them then transitioning to this digital mindset where it's you talk about the different sales channels, the different social channels you could be selling on. That becomes a differentiator for you in terms of how do you go after your customer and position your products. But I think the ultimate in terms of truly thinking about differentiation is once you embrace the product and that digital mindset, but then you start to think about complete automation across your entire back end. So not only how you sell, but how you actually run your business on the day-to-day. That is probably one of the truly most freeing things. And we saw that from the data that you took us through, Gary. It's, everyone's really, it's all about that time. What is that time, and how can I really shift it to value creating activities like sales, marketing, the product development, spending that time and potentially losing revenue because of, the way you do your inventory and order management, the way you do your reporting and fulfillment. These are all ways, they're all tactical execution. And I think it goes back to the point on so what. So what are the things that are actually driving my business and not the things that are required to actually execute within the business. So.
Gotcha. But those are very helpful. We're seeing a lot of comments come in, not just questions. And so I'm hoping you're building.
I like the comments as well.
We started this by saying you're not alone. I hope you're building out a community, because it looks like people really want to not be alone, and they're eager to help each other. Here's a comment coming in. I also suggest business look at Zapier.com to assist in automating. They're running Zaps between TradeGecko and Slack to notify when an order comes in. I believe this person says it's super important. In terms of being on top of orders, even when you can't fulfill, that you use the opportunity to communicate. So again, a sense of community. People are coming in with their comments, and I think that's exciting for us. Here's another question. I just want to respect it.
Yeah,
as well as we can answer any of these. Can you share what ratio of the SMBs surveyed were TradeGecko customers today, please? It was actually a small percentage. I won't go over I don't recall the exact percentage, but what we used some of a proprietary database that TradeGecko had, but the majority of the surveys we conducted were from a series of online panels that we used through a company called Cint. So we used a very reputable global panel. And it's actually a panel of panels to get to small business people, and I hope that answers your question.
I think that's a key point, because I mean we have the data on the TradeGecko side of things, and I think the reality is we want to try to understand these consistent truths across SMB businesses globally. Yeah, that allows us to be more efficient and effective in how we support them and how we allow them to continue to grow and strive and just ultimately be successful.
Yeah, and just as the researcher in this group, Cameron, I have to say, there's value to just talking to your customers, but clearly the research we did here was to help you and others understand the global marketplace for small and medium-sized businesses. We can't learn that just by talking to your customers. We had to talk to principally customers just not only from all over the globe, but who are using, as we saw, all kinds of different solutions. So if you recall, just to drive this point home with the person who's answered, we did see, again, pen and paper, Excel and Google Sheets. Well over half of the people we surveyed still using those kinds of solutions. Well, let me ask you another question. As companies increase their total revenue, here it's coming in, it looks like they also tend towards more traditional sales channels. Again, from your experience, what's behind those numbers?
Yeah, it's like I said at the outset, I mean, all businesses kind of take on their own journey depending on, their product, who they're selling to, and just even the preferences of the business owner. I think there's like a natural evolution that occurs. And what we've actually seen is that as this brand grows, you're kind of moving from this niche and trying to get mainstream within that customer segment that you're selling to. And a lot of the companies that we work with, they start as like kind of digitally native, where it's like, hey, we sell on this e-commerce channel, or we sell on this marketplace. And they don't really have the appetite to say, hey, let's build out a sales force, or let's do wholesale distribution. But the reality is, the more you focus on that product and your customers, it resonates with your customers. We see that a lot of these companies are actually, getting approached by different distribution companies where it's, hey, we love your brand, we want to have it in our retail shop, or we want to distribute this in parts of Europe for you. It's really fascinating, and I think as a business owner, you just need to be, embrace that there's certain channels that you need to kind of get more comfortable with, and maybe at the outset you're not thinking about it as part of your business, but it's really about continuing to evolve as a business owner.
Makes sense. Well, thinking about evolution of a business owner, we've got a question here from somebody who's been in business for over 10 years, and they're being honest. They're saying, look, I still manage by paper and pencil, by pen and paper. I need to automate. I'm just reading this now. I need to automate to meet my growing need, but I'm afraid of potential downtime and impact my bottom line. Is this a real fear?
Oh, absolutely. People tend to want to, operate the way they've been operating, historically, right? It's a comfort thing, right?
Even if it's hard, we're comfortable.
Exactly. We're creatures of habit, right?
Right.
Doing something new sometimes feels uncomfortable, but that is, one of the things you have to continuously challenge yourself on as that business owner is forcing yourself outside the comfort zone, because we know as human beings, like forcing ourselves outside the comfort zone is when real learning and real change happen.
How long does it take to onboard? How long does it take to switch over? Like if I went just from pen and paper, like am I doing this on my own? Is it
This
gonna need a 2-week course? Do I need to attend Harvard? What
no. This is like I said, software today is probably more simple than we've ever seen in the past. And here at TradeGecko, just from my team, is we have an onboarding team dedicated to working with TradeGecko merchants to get them going. Whether that's integrating your first channel where you want to start adding new marketplaces, or e-commerce, or selling through point of sale. We can basically get you set up in a matter of hours. It's relatively straightforward. Obviously, there's complex businesses that are selling through 10 plus different channels, which take a little bit more time and effort. But we make every effort to really kind of handhold our customers through these experiences, because we know it's uncomfortable, it's challenging, and it ultimately impacts their business and ability. But you can maintain your pen and paper while we get you set up, and you can see, over a 1-2 month period, how your business has changed in terms of the way you manage it.
And so you stay with them through that onboarding process.
Yeah, we not only have an onboarding team, but we also have depending on the plan that you select, we actually have an account management team as well, because we do recognize that these businesses, they may start as one channel. They'll grow in sophistication, and the reality is, with TradeGecko, we want to build a long-lasting partnership with all of the merchants that we support. So we look at this as not only like an individual product that we're giving you, but it's how do we help you support and grow with the lifetime of your business.
Gotcha. We've got 1 minute, so you've got
1 minute.
10 seconds for me to ask, 50 seconds for you to answer. A very specific question: are warehouse management tools the best options for managing stockouts?
Yeah, warehouse management tools are interesting, because that's really focused on kind of your warehouse itself. So I'd say not necessarily. The way we look at things is, the best option is to ensure that you don't stock out or understock your product. So what we look at is, and one of the key features we have within TradeGecko is the demand forecasting, because we know that demand kind of fluctuates, and you want to be able to respond to the needs of your customers. So having something where you're managing all of the different orders that you have, managing your entire product catalog, managing the replenishment of all of those orders, and then doing that through one consolidated tool really helps you be more efficient in terms of how you run your business.
Very good. Could I make a commitment on both our behalf, because the time is up? But I'd like to suggest that if people have other questions, you can reach out to Cameron. It could be on the research itself. I'll personally answer, or Cameron will answer. So please, whether you're listening live now or later on you're listening to a recorded version, please send us your questions, because we love to engage, and we love to get answers to the many questions people have around how to make your business successful in 2018.
Absolutely. Email address camv@tradegecko.com. Look forward to engaging with every merchant out there. Love to understand your business, what makes you tick, and how we potentially could help you. So don't hesitate, and love to engage. And the final thing that I just wanted to once again plug, I know I took the creative liberties to throw it in there earlier. The question around how do you get that information to continuously educate you on your journey as you're evolving your business is Masters of Commerce. And this is something that TradeGecko's created. It's not TradeGecko content. It's really all about a curated newsletter and active community of commerce leaders, where every 2 weeks all of our subscribers will receive insights, tricks, the best latest article, really thinking about how do we equip you with the skills to continue to grow your retail or wholesale business. So I encourage everyone to sign up. All of the details are right here on the slide. So that's the Masters of Commerce.
That's great. Well, from what I saw doing the survey and just taking the Q&A now, the demand for community and the fact that people aren't alone is going to do you and your audience very well today. Thank you so much for the opportunity to share these results. Best of luck in your business, Cameron.
Thank you so much, Gary. And to everyone listening, on behalf of Gary, myself, the entire TradeGecko team, we really want to thank you guys for joining us for the last hour, and do wish each and every one of you all of the best in your journey, and happy selling.
Thank you.